Is there a dark side to meat-based diets? Apparently, Stephanie Keto Person believes that there is, because 2 months ago, she uploaded a video called Epic Rant exposing the dark side of meat-based diets. Epic Rant! Today. 2 months ago, like I said, 3,000 views. I was sent this video by someone, and I wish that I had screenshot the comment that I received this recommendation from. Unfortunately, I did not do that, and I think it was quite a while back. So if you are watching this, whoever sent it to me, you can say in the comment section if you are the person who sent it to me. But anyway, Stephanie is someone that has gone right off the deep end with things, and she pretends like she's justified in her approach because, oh, I've dealt with clients for a long time, so I have an adjacent of clinical experience. And that is an argument, but it doesn't mean that your approach for helping these people with their issues was appropriate. In fact, she stressed quite low protein consumption, from my understanding, a while back on her meat-based journey or whatever. We're going to get into this. We probably won't finish it because it's 23 minutes and 51 seconds long, and you know how easily I can turn a 10-minute video into a 2-hour video. So we're going to jump directly into this, waste no further time. But first, just like always, subscribe to the Patreon if you haven't already to gain access to 1 week early uploads, ad-free content, uncensored content, and an exclusive Discord server. And also, if you haven't bought my book, Contraindicated, go ahead and do that as well. Links to both of those in the description below. By the time you're watching this, the second edition of the book is out. Most likely, the hype is real. Audiobook, ebook, paperback, hardcover, all out now, most likely. Unless you're a Patreon viewer, in which you will probably have to wait at least a few more days. Sorry for the tantalization there. All right, so let's get into this.
Eating a bunch of protein and not balancing your fats, omitting...
Define balance. Usually the amount of fat and protein you ought to be eating is determined by your appetite. However, appetite signaling can be slightly disrupted given the poor dietary behavior that many people have. And so in that case, my rule for protein at least is 1.75 grams per kilogram of lean body mass, being very roughly calculated by taking your height in meters squared and multiplying it by 22.5, yielding your estimated lean body mass in kilograms, depending on your activity frequency, type, etc. I usually say it can be up to 1.5 times that amount, but for the general population, the previous rule that I just laid out is really a good measurement if you cannot trust your appetite. With regard to fat, I say eat fat liberally no matter who you are, in the forms of butter, tallow, lard, suet, or ghee, or optimally, those are added fats, optimally the associated fat of large ruminant animals in your meat. Just get fattier cuts if you would like to have more fat in your diet. Anyway, what is next?
Omitting plants and saying that carnivore is amazing for 20 years.
It's been amazing for hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years actually, whenever we as a species, including proto-humans that preceded our current speciation, ate exclusively the flesh and associated fat of large ruminant animals, at least primarily, and had very limited plant material that, inferentially speaking, seemed to have been consumed only during times of food scarcity. So why wouldn't it be optimal for, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 years, a lifetime? There's no reason to believe that. And before people point to the average lifespan of our hunter-gatherer ancestors, you really think that was due to diet? It's just being deliberately obtuse at that point, or unconsciously obtuse and having your unconscious mind manipulate your conscious mind like a ventriloquist into justifying your dietary position due to feeling threatened by a different viewpoint. Those are the only explanations for that stupid argument. Anyway, what's next?
Fasting, OMAD, dry fasting, snake diets, trying to get...
Don't go on a snake diet, because now the snake diet, apparently Cole Robinson is consuming hundreds of grams, if not thousands at this point, of sugar a day, and he's promoting that. Also, there's nothing wrong with 1 meal a day. In fact, if people are watching that aren't aware, every single time you eat any food, no matter what it is, it will initiate, at the very least, low-grade inflammation. It'll be more than low-grade if you consume something that actively induces inflammation and has inflammatory compounds in it, like, I don't know, plants. But therefore, you ought to minimize the amount of time that you derive your nutritional requirements for the day to 1 meal a day. That also is conducive to effectuating a sufficient insulin response given an adequate bolus of protein to stimulate the anabolic processes that are required to be stimulated in the human body, like thyroid hormone synthesis and production and function, and electrolyte maintenance at the level of the kidney. So Anyway, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with dry fasting as long as you don't do it too often. I just started mine today. So anyway.
All of your minerals from just meat.
Yes, you can, Stephanie. And frankly, I have very little patience for your attitude, okay? Very little patience for this arrogant snark of yours.
Steak.
Who says that you have to only eat steak, Stephanie? This is what I mean by saying, like, the carnivore diet, as if it's one thing. There's many variations. You can have seafood on the carnivore diet, okay? To a sensible extent. You don't want seafood to make up the majority of your diet, especially given human intervention causing lots of heavy metal poisoning in fish. Humans can be very good, and humans can also be very not good. Intentional or not, intentions aside. You can also have chicken, you can have poultry, you just gotta be careful with where you source it. Again, due to human intervention. But you can still get pastured animals, it just costs more. So if you have the money, why not go for it? You also have different cuts of meat. Ground beef or mince, depending on where you're watching from, is something that has meat from all parts of the cow. So there's something. Switch things up. Dairy is something else if you tolerate it well. Okay, Stephanie?
Coffee and cheese.
You shouldn't be drinking coffee, so eliminate that.
Intermittent ketosis.
Intermittent ketosis. You should be in ketosis the majority of the time. It's the metabolic process or metabolic activity that our genes have most evolved within, actually. We're not supposed to be in anabolism all the time. Anabolism being the building up and storing of things, like the creation of new fat, the creation of triglycerides for fat storage. That's not, among other things, by the way, but that's not the activity that we're most designed to be in all the time. And I'm not saying that you said that, but your intermittent ketosis fits that pattern. 20 hours of ketosis, 4 hours of glycolytic activity, anabolic activity. Stephanie, what is this?
Ketosis? Oh, we're going hard today. Let's get into it.
What you mean by going hard usually means being completely erroneous. So let's get into it, Stephanie.
Now, after watching all of the fire going on the west side where I used to live, and I can recognize all those areas, ooh, my blood started boiling. And I drew that red threaded line right over to everything that trends and how we're all affected by things. It's all symbiotic. We're all connected. And people need to wake the frack up, including something as simple as like the carnivore diet or the keto diet.
Stop saying the carnivore diet, Stephanie. There is not one carnivore diet.
Or the snake diet or the lion diet.
Again, the only diet that you just listed there that is actually one diet is the lion diet. But even then, there are different variations of the lion diet because there's different cuts of meat, Stephanie. So continue.
Ketosis or targeted ketosis. All of this ends up being like a cult.
It can become cultic, yes, which is why we need to remain objective. We need to steelman our opponent's arguments. We need to observe the hard sciences that we have at our disposal with the most objective analyses possible. Absolutely correct, Stephanie. Do you do that? You have a capacity for it, but I don't see it.
People will protect what they feel like. People act like they're a part of a club for the first time.
Yes, because humans are tribal.
Like it's a religion. And they go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, wanting so badly. I get it. You want to believe that this is the cat's meow, that it's like a miracle and a savior. And what about Michaela Peters?
See, okay, I just covered this in the last video I reacted to. It's the complete opposite. We observed the sciences first and then came to our conclusion. We didn't come to a conclusion because we saw a tribe that seemed to fit our aesthetic desires and then decided to pseudo-sophisticate and obfuscate the actual science at hand in order to make the interpretations of the science and the conclusions that we arrived at fit our already chosen ideology, which is what you're saying we did. That's not what we did. That's false, okay? This book that's in my hands right now, contraindicated, my book. The entire story of me writing this book was aggregating all of the information that I had accrued over the last, 4 years at that point into one book in order to take a step back and look at what I had written to see if it made sense. And once it made sense, I was completely sold on the carnivore diet, quote unquote, because it isn't one thing. That's actually what happened because I'm objective. I was already consuming it for a long time beforehand because I was already convinced personally. But in order to fully convince myself, I had to write everything down because that's what happens when my brain gets all noisy.
But the reality is that the way society works today is that everything just about is smoke and mirrors when people glorify how easy things are.
Yes, sure. Okay, the carnivore diet transition process, or a carnivore diet transition process, can be difficult, but once you're on it, it is quite easy, actually. It's not as easy as it would have been 100,000 years ago when we would have, first of all, intuitively eaten this way, but also we live in a modern world now, so we have to try and go through some gymnastics a little bit, make things work, but that's not the fault of the diet.
If you don't contextualize what you're promoting, you leave the audience to fill in the gaps and guess. Like prime.
Right, and that's why I'm super, incredibly particular and specific on this channel. And I don't leave any stone unturned. It's why I pause so often, the videos that I'm watching.
This priming thing really just irritates the frack out of me.
Priming, what's wrong with priming? I don't think that it's something that you should do all the time. It's a protocol that seems to help people with fat loss if they're having stubborn fat loss, and there's mechanisms that we can, point to as suggested reasons, such as increasing metabolic rate, increasing nutrient repletion, etc., etc. Those are the first things that come to mind. But okay, let's get into why it irritates you.
Is eating a ton of protein and then
Define a ton, Stephanie.
gorging on fat and then fasting
Define gorging on fat, Stephanie.
is
And then fasting for how long and in what fashion?
so stupid.
No, that's your opinion, Stephanie. That is your opinion. And I understand that you're angry right now because you just said it in the beginning, and everyone has the right to be angry. But it doesn't mean that whatever's going to come out of your mouth when you are angry is sensible or truthful, and it's not. This is your opinion.
Y'all fell for that crap. Not all.
Okay, so fell for it. You haven't actually brought anything to the table that would point in the direction of discouraging people, with any sense, from a diet like this at all. Or sorry, a protocol. We're back 8 days later. Let's continue.
Hook, line, and sinker. Because somebody on the internet said this is a new strategy.
Yes, if someone on the internet says that this could be a new strategy for losing weight that you haven't heard of before, and all of your previous strategies haven't precisely worked, at least completely, then why wouldn't you decide to try it, Stephanie? There's no problem with that, okay?
Create a whole new made-up fairy tale diet.
Fairy tale diet. Priming isn't a diet. It's a method. It's an attempted method at basically removing any remaining extant fat that seems to be indicated to be removed from the body, okay? Usually priming isn't a protocol that people start the carnivore diet with, or a carnivore diet, okay?
And then people did it. And they developed gout. Oh yeah,
Who developed gout? And also, by the way, Stephanie, are you saying that a carnivore diet caused it, or the priming did it? Because how can a priming protocol that is supposed to be very acute do such a thing? And even if it does, it's not a variation. It's not a dietary variation of carnivore. That is a protocol utilizing a carnivore diet. That's silly. Gout is an inflammatory condition. There is some ambiguity as to whether or not uric acid, but it's urate at physiological pH at all times, causes it, actually, because it may not. Urate is a water-based antioxidant that the body produces on its own. However, if a high enough concentration that is aberrant is produced in the body, then it may, or may not, once again, cause gout. And if so, what is the biggest culprit for urate production? Because it's not amino acids from animal products. It's purine breakdown from fructose metabolism in the liver, okay? So there is some ambiguity with that. And also, you're just saying words, which is fine. You can give your experience dealing with clients, and that's fine, okay? I don't really expect people to be like, here's the proof, especially when it's with private people, private individuals. But I will say that I'm curious to see the details on that.
Oh yeah, I consult these people who came from that world. Gout, high B12.
I would suspect that's a problem. I would posit that's a problem. High B12 is what she just said. According to who, on the basis of what? What were the symptoms? Because Stephanie, B12 is stored in the liver, and when it is not needed anymore, the body is very proficient and adept at excreting such things. Not to mention that if they're eating lots of organ meats, then if that is a thing that happens, B12 in excess, then that could be the possible culprit, considering we do not seem to be designed to be eating large quantities, exorbitant quantities of organ meats, particularly liver, actually. I find liver repulsive, and that is not a dig at anyone that decides to eat liver that watches my channel, because guess what? In a way, I envy you. I envy your capability of doing that. Anyway.
High iron levels. Constipation.
High iron usually refers to high ferritin, a storage form of iron that is non-toxic. Heme iron itself is non-toxic, and that's what is stored in ferritin. High relative to what is the question that I always ask here. Relative to what? Were these people symptomatic with something that would give the impression that they had a problem with iron levels? Stephanie, people on a carnivore diet can expect their ferritin to go up. If anything, the level that it attains on such a diet is most likely what was indicated to have been the level continuously previously, but they were not providing their bodies with the essential nutrients it needed to attain the level. What gives you the idea or the impression that they had bona fide high iron levels? Stephanie.
Thyroid problems.
Thyroid problems according to who, on the basis of what? Stephanie. Were these people symptomatic with things that would give the impression that they had low thyroid hormone issues? And by the way, if they did, there is a very clear reason as to why that could be the case on a diet bereft of carbohydrates, Stephanie. Did they have significant muscle loss, an inability to put on adequate muscle given adequate stimulus or stimuli? And even if the answer to that question in particular is yes, there could be a slew of other reasons as to why that is. Did they have that symptom or those symptoms along with being cold, body temperature dysregulation? Did they have those symptoms alongside electrolyte imbalances such as, I don't know, heart palpitations, muscle cramping, muscle twitching, migraine headaches, or just regular headaches? Did they have any of these issues alongside them? These are questions that need to have answers that are provided here, instead of just saying thyroid problems, where you're looking at numerical values only. And by the way, even if you were, what were the criteria that you were using to assess whether they had a problem or not? So this is already an incorrect way of doing it, that would be. But even if you were to go through that incorrect route, you can make it even more incorrect by looking at the values improperly. What's important with thyroid hormone levels is whether they're present in balance, not whether one is abnormally high as compared to another, like T3 and TSH. Stephanie, these things matter. And guess what? If the answer is yes to all of those things, it doesn't mean give up on carnivore, okay? It indicates that you're probably not consuming sufficient protein for your needs, considering insulin's importance in metabolic processes. Insulin is important. Anyone that demonizes insulin, no, not good, okay? Don't listen to people that demonize insulin. Insulin has a role to play, or else the body wouldn't produce it.
From gorging on meat.
From gorging on meat. So you just drew a causal inference. That's your opinion, Stephanie. And once again, you have not established if these people actually had problems or not, okay? See, here in this space, we treat people that report them having problems with dignity and respect. So we don't blame them for having the issues, implicitly or explicitly. We don't get upset with them. But you do have to be objective and try and figure out the problem before intervening, because, you see, there's this thing called the Hippocratic Oath, Stephanie, and it indicates that you are obligated to not intervene in circumstances where a patient or a client presents with no symptoms. Okay, and if they do present with symptoms, you have to be very meticulous with how you assess their issue. You seem to be inputting your ideology into this, into your diagnoses, okay? No, not from gorging on meat. That's your opinion. We're going to need some more evidence to make that conclusion that you're correct on that.
Hypoglycemia on a level that you can't even describe.
Really? Hypoglycemia. If it's on a level that you can't even describe, then either they're not consuming enough protein for their needs, or I would suspect they're having a liver issue. We need to know these people's health history as well, okay? We really do, because usually people with liver problems, past liver issues, they're going to have an impairment of their ability to produce glucose endogenously. I've actually heard of one person in particular that has that problem. And by the way, you know how many carbs they have to consume to maintain glucose levels at an ostensibly indicated level for their physiology? I don't know, 10 to 20 grams, last I checked. So anyway.
I know. And then...
You know what, Stephanie? What?
As much fat as possible? But what about your gallbladder?
You don't want to eat as much fat as possible, Stephanie. What advice is this? I'm not saying you're giving it. Obviously, you're criticizing this advice, but what advice are you citing? Because this is not the typical advice that is given, Stephanie.
Possible, but what about your gallbladder?
What about your gallbladder, Stephanie? The gallbladder is involved in secreting bile to break down the fat that you consume. What's the problem? It has a certain amount until eventually it runs out of bile, which is why you should be very careful with the type of meat that you get. It can't be too fatty or else you won't be able to stomach it. But guess what? Your body has a great way of regulating how much fat that it should be consuming by, I don't know, your appetite. The only time that seems to be an issue is when you're eating butter by the stick. Then it seems that you can consume too much. Yes, that's the thing about dairy. Very interesting. However, it may actually have nothing to do with dairy, and it may actually have something to do with the fact that you're eating fat in isolation, which is not ancestrally consistent, and therefore not something your bodies are familiar with withstanding. It all goes back to what pressures have been exerted on our genome and which ones have not. It really is that simple.
Do you have enough pancreatic lipase?
Yes, or else I wouldn't be able to digest my food properly. Pancreatic lipase and gallbladder stuff and bile salts and all these other things that she's referring to. I'm very familiar with these things, considering I studied biochemistry. This is one of the first things taught in lipoprotein metabolism. Would you like me to get into that, Stephanie?
What if you have severe hypoglycemia? These things are...
What if, Stephanie? What is the incidence rate of people that are embarking upon a carnivore diet, or at least something similar to that? No, a carnivore approach, because carnivore doesn't have to be 100% lion diet. It can be 90% animal foods, technically. But there's some ambiguity there as well, nuance. Anyway, what is the incidence rate of people embarking upon such diets and them experiencing hypoglycemia? Is this actually something that you are saying right now? Are you serious, Stephanie? Protein, gluconeogenesis. Gluconeogenesis is a demand-driven process as well as a supply-driven process. They're not mutually exclusive. Check out my video that I did on this recently. It is a very technical video, okay? It's my most technical video that I've ever uploaded. But it wasn't technical for the sake of being technical. It's something that needed to be addressed, considering people want to pretend like gluconeogenesis is an exclusively demand-driven process, as if that even is able to exist in the field of chemistry. It disobeys the laws of physics, that concept. Anyway.
These things are not even talked about.
They're not talked about because they're not encountered. Hardly ever, Stephanie. Okay, once again, it goes back to what is the incidence rate of this? And then whatever that incidence rate is, if you observe that population, how many of them have a health history that has something to do with their liver? Or how many of them are not consuming enough protein because they have been told that ketosis is the best thing ever and they need to be in ketosis 24/7, which is false. That's dangerously untrue.
It's just, and what about the other? Just eat meat, because meat just heals. Just eat.
What's wrong with that advice? You can live off of meat and meat alone for the rest of your entire life, because that's what we did for 4.5 million years of our existence, if you include proto-humans that preceded our current speciation, that being Homo sapiens sapien. So if you're looking at our current speciation, we've been doing it for hundreds of thousands of years, Stephanie, with very minimal plant material in between.
Just like a friggin' vegan, just eat 2 vegetables because they heal.
They don't say that either. They also emphasize fruit, by the way, and oils. They emphasize the consumption of a lot of other things. They do not say to just eat plants, by the way. There might be some of them. The difference here is that every single one of those people is wrong. You should not be eating things that are man-made exclusively, which all of that, except honey, which is also debated in the vegan community as to whether it's vegan or not, but except honey and maybe some other things. Those are completely natural, untouched by man, okay? But almost all plants that we eat today are man-made, or at least hybridized in a way that has made them a perverted version of their original selves. Okay, we did not evolve eating plants primarily, and therefore we are not adapted to eating primarily plants. Even a significant amount of our diet being plants, especially given the fact that these plants that we're talking about here, the plants concerned, are man-made. Grafted, hybridized to be juicier, starchier, sweeter, bigger, depending on whether you're talking about a vegetable or a plant. And a vegetable is actually a culinary term, in reality. There's either plants or there's the fruit of plants. So anyway, all of those things that I just listed out are contraindications in the human diet. Contraindicated. Link in the description below for that book. Not advised as a course of treatment or procedure.
And they put MD next to their names, and you all listen to it.
Okay, so you're criticizing the appeal to authority fallacy, which is great, that's fine, but we don't listen to them because they have an MD next to their name. Maybe some of them, there is an unconscious desire to look up to people that have an authority tag next to their name, and that's fine. It's actually an innate, intrinsic part of human nature. Every single person, including myself, has that. We just have to be conscious of that and consciously not listen to that reptilian part of our brain, okay? But no, that is not the reason why on this channel we espouse a lot of what, for example, I don't have anything next to my name, okay? I have a high school diploma, all right?
Make it make sense. And then
Well, we do make it make sense. I've seen quite a bit of your content, Stephanie, and you don't really make a lot of sense.
It's like, what about you? Yeah, what about me? You question me, and you question anybody who puts a phone or a camera in front of their face.
Exactly. I'd like to think that's what I'm doing right now. In reality, I'm not really questioning anything, I'm just criticizing. But anyway.
It considers themselves an authority to anything.
I don't really consider myself an authority figure, okay? I consider myself a person that knows a lot about certain things and knows enough to know when bullshit is being espoused in the area of human nutrition science, or human nutrition in general, actually. What our species appropriate diet is and what our diet ought to be today.
Every freaking day, I'm working with people where their health is declining on carnivore diets. Their health...
Okay, so once again, we need more details. You keep saying that, and there's many reasons as to why that could be the case that have actually nothing to do with a carnivore diet. There is a way to do it properly in an indicated fashion. I mean, Stephanie, a diet of milk only is carnivore. That's doing a carnivore diet improperly. We need to eat what we are designed to eat as a species, which is, once again, if you've watched my 5 central carnivore tenets, the 5 simple rules of the carnivore diet or something video, can't remember the exact title, I'll link it into the top right corner of the screen, you'll already know what I'm about to say. What our diet is supposed to be, or in other words, our indicated diet, is what our diet has been for millions of years consistently, because according to Darwinian evolution, adaptation occurs acutely in a phenotypical way over short periods of change, and if that change remains consistent for a very long amount of time, it becomes a genotypical permanent change to our genome. We are most adapted, according to stable nitrogen and carbon isotope analysis conducted on the collagen of the long bones of ancient human remains using mass spectroscopy on a repeated basis all across the world, to be eating a diet that is effectively 100% carnivore, consisting of the flesh and associated fat of large ruminant animals primarily, added fat, if desired, considering we do have some environmental changes that require us to be a little more interventionist, in the forms of butter, tallow, lard, suet, and or ghee, added salt to taste, because we don't consume the blood of animals anymore, and also we still salt anyway, so it's still at least slightly ancestrally consistent. And some people, salt to taste means not adding salt at all, so there you go. And water. Eating 1 meal a day, 2 maximum is what I say, unless you are a bodybuilder that is competitive. Eat till satiety. In 1 meal is the general rule, though, of protein and fat. It seems that you can be a little more liberal with fat than protein in terms of maintaining optimal health status, experientially and ostensibly, visually. Those two things usually corresponding with each other. So, Stephanie, I'm going to take another break, and I'll be back in about half a second.
We already know that people's health tanked on keto. That's why it stopped trending.
Keto is an umbrella term for a multitude of other diets, okay? The carnivore diet is ketogenic in that it keeps you in a ketogenic state, a state of ketosis, the majority of your existence on such a diet. But it doesn't mean that you should stay in continuous 24/7 ketosis, and we've covered it already. You don't want to, because eventually that turns into degradation. Anabolism is a good thing. It's just been abused, you can think of it as.
People's hair start falling out.
But not everyone's. But also, once again, anabolism is a good thing. You need it. You need insulin, proper insulin signaling. You don't want a spike in insulin, and you don't want a spike in glucose. You want a slow, undulating curve.
Their gallbladder starts to get infected or...
Stephanie, you are going to need to provide evidence that a carnivore diet causes an infection of the gallbladder, when an infection has to do with a living pathogen, whether it be a virus, whether it be a bacterium, infiltrating the system, Stephanie. Carnivore diets don't cause infection. What the f*** are you talking about?
The infected gallbladder just became worse.
So what is your evidence that a carnivore diet made an infected gallbladder worse? What is the mechanism here? These are just words. The gallbladder is stimulated by cholecystokinin from the gastric mucosa, chemoreceptors particularly in the cells of the gastric mucosa, after you consume fat, which stimulates the smooth muscle in the gallbladder to secrete bile into the small intestine, which helps for breaking down fat into smaller globules. And then what you mentioned earlier, pancreatic lipase, works with colipase as a coenzyme, a cofactor activated by trypsin to break apart those fat globules, they're called micelles, into monoglycerides and individual fatty acids, thus to be sequestered by enterocytes and packaged up into chylomicrons for transport. Okay? So how does eating fat cause an infection of the gallbladder, Stephanie? How does that even work?
Chronic fatigue, thyroid problems.
Chronic fatigue and thyroid problems. Now you've said the things that I've already covered here, haven't you?
Can't poop, diarrhea, and then
digestion issues, Stephanie, can result from an inadequate protein to fat ratio on carnivore. Fact.
Keto stopped trending.
Keto stopped trending because, first of all, it depends on what you mean by keto. Carnivore is quite a trendy topic still. It's ever growing. And that's a keto diet. Keto is an umbrella term. What diet do you mean? There's not a keto diet. Even within the subgroups of keto, there's keto, and then there's subgroups of keto, carnivore, plant-based keto. Even within the subgroups, it's not one diet. There's not the carnivore diet. So then you add another level, it's even more vague to call the diet the keto diet. There are a slew, dozens of different keto diets, Stephanie. What do you mean? Plant-based keto probably stopped trending. That's probably what you're referring to. That stopped trending because people realized how much of a fad diet it was. Because that is a fad diet. People were most likely coming down with the symptoms, by my estimation, that you're talking about right now. Carnivore is vastly different. To put them on the same level is, frankly, a technicality more than it is a practicality. They're not the same.
People thought it was like anti-cancer, anti-everything.
You cannot prove whether a diet is anti-cancer. And once again, we're not talking about a diet. We're talking about many when you say the keto diet.
Autoimmune, and then like it didn't fix people. It fixed some.
Yeah, exactly. You had to correct yourself there. Fine, you corrected yourself. Good, great. We've wiped the slate clean. Just because some people didn't get good on the diet, by the way, does not mean that it was the diet's fault, first and foremost. It could mean that, but on that logic alone, it does not mean that. But when you add on top of it the word keto, a broad umbrella term, you've got so many unanswered questions that result from that. So she's going on a rant of keto, not an epic rant, first of all, no, exposing the dark side of meat-based diets. What are you exposing, Stephanie? You're 5 minutes into this video, you haven't exposed anything.
Contextually, but not all. So why are people having...
And we covered that. So why are people having so what?
And why do I do these videos? Because
People are having so many problems. Well, many reasons. The first one that comes to mind at this moment is the fact that people have been on a wrong diet, a contraindicated, one could say, diet, for, in some cases, decades, since birth. And I actually mean it. Sometimes literally since birth, with baby formula. So when you go to a species-appropriate diet, do you really think that it's going to be a magic, aha, the body's just going to go, thanks, bro? No. Sometimes that happens. I would argue that's probably the minority of people, but I have no data to back that up, so I could be wrong. It could be 40%, a significant minority, but I'd say that's probably the minority. I believe that it takes transition time and transition strategy. It's one of the things that we talk about in the carnivore certification program that I'm affiliated with, headed by Coach Peter. Just did an interview with him recently about the course, so you probably have already seen it. If not, it's coming soon. Stay tuned. It's very important. Module 1, actually, that's what that is. Very important for people to transition properly because you won't necessarily see those symptoms immediately. It can sometimes take months, it seems. Anyway, does this have to do with a carnivore diet? Or does this have to do with transition methods? Does it have to do with the actual constituents of the carnivore diet concerned? Because once again, a diet of beef jerky only is not a good diet to be consuming. You will become deficient eventually, but that's a carnivore diet, Stephanie. Define carnivore diet. What were these people consuming? And in what fashion were they consuming their food? Multiple meals a day? Multiple small meals? Not indicated. We're not grazers, Stephanie.
Coaching people who are fracked up.
Speaking of coaching, if you want to become an accredited coach, internationally accredited coach, to have more qualifications than regular coaches that oftentimes have none, you can call yourself a coach legally without any credentials at all, by the way. Just so you guys know. A lot of you probably already know that. Just to clarify, I already knew that. You want to become an accredited coach, internationally accredited. And if you want to find out what that means, stay tuned to the interview with Peter if you haven't seen it already, if it's not out already. Links in the description to reach out to Peter himself and sign up for that program.
I would say 99 to 100% of everyone I coached or have coached have listened to someone else talk about eating tons of protein.
Define tons of protein, Stephanie. And by the way, that's not what I advocate for. I advocate for high fat, moderate protein as a general rule, because that seems to be what's indicated for us. At least the same amount of fat as protein, but that's usually inferred by your appetite. I've seen people that have an appetite for more protein than fat. So guess what I suggest that they consume? The answer is right there. I'm not even gonna explicitly answer it. Okay, Stephanie, there are people out there that say to prioritize protein as a general rule, and I disagree with them. To try and play devil's advocate here, yes, I think that's a terrible suggestion. Okay, most of those people seem deficient in fat. And not only are they deficient in fat, I believe that they are consuming way too much protein as well, because you have to compensate for the lack of fat, and then you have glucose regulation problems. That does not mean that a carnivore diet that is properly tenured and properly fortified to be the most congruent with what our species-appropriate, species-specific diet is, to the best inferences that we have, is contraindicated. It does not mean that at all. In fact, that's just false.
Fasting to oblivion, eating 1 meal a day.
Fasting to oblivion, eating 1 meal a day. Wait, hold on a minute. I have to make sure I heard this right.
Protein. Or fasting to oblivion, eating 1 meal a day.
Fasting to oblivion, eating 1 meal a day. Wait, are those two separate sentences? Because there's no way that you actually meant that eating 1 meal a day is fasting to oblivion, Stephanie. There's no way that you actually meant that. In fact, I'm actually not kidding. I'm not doing this for comedic effect. I don't think she actually believes that. So I'm not even going to cover that. Let's continue. I really hope she didn't actually mean that. I hope that I misheard. You must have made a mistake.
And calling it autophagy.
Calling it fasting is not autophagy, Stephanie. Fasting activates autophagy because it's a very catabolic state that you enter. And autophagy is something that is activated in times of catabolism, which makes sense if you know what autophagy is, which is basically the eating of cells by the body for recycling purposes. They recycle elements of the cells for other things, they excrete them if they have no use or utility, and then they repair the tissues as well. But calling 1 meal a day OMAD, fasting, is a very specious way of putting it. It's very superficial.
And then the listener doesn't know what autophagy is.
I do. Also, frankly, come on. People that have been in this space long enough, I think they know what autophagy is, especially if they're trying to heal themselves from chronic illness.
Listeners have never been affected by it.
Well, I don't really know what the hell this is, but frankly, I don't know what this is at all. I have no idea what her point is here. And by the way, I don't even know really what she's saying at this point. The listener hasn't felt the effects of autophagy. Are you saying that when these people that they're listening to talk about autophagy, if the listener hasn't heard about autophagy because they haven't had the effects and they also haven't felt the effects of autophagy, then they think of it as a word that confers authority upon the listener and therefore it entices them to do things that you think are not appropriate to be doing? Is that what you're saying? I'm genuinely trying to be, believe it or not, on this channel, I give as much grace as possible. I'm trying here.
They hear these things and then they just follow it. Hook, line.
Okay, that does sound like what she's saying. Glad that I didn't jump to any conclusions. Hook, line, and sinker. Yeah, okay. So, Stephanie, there is bad advice that is given in every space. There's advice that's given in the carnivore space that I disagree with. That doesn't mean that a carnivore approach is not indicated for our physiology or contraindicated. Okay, Stephanie? I don't know what your point is. Even in the title, you put meat-based diets, plural. Which ones?
Sinker. And that's the way society is. We've been lied to, and then we continue to be lied to.
Yes. Now show some proof that a carnivore approach is not indicated because it causes all of the things that you alluded to in the beginning. Because you haven't provided any in any of your videos.
Now, omitting the truth to most people is not considered a lie. But either they
could be considered deceitful, though.
Shite out, do not contextualize things to the masses, or they're just naive. But whatever it is, every day, I continue to deal.
You want to talk about a lack of contextualizing, and then you don't give any details behind why these clients may have been actually experiencing these issues. What was their context? Every person is different. What were they doing?
People who develop severe health issues on low-carb diets. We know.
Hold on a minute. Stephanie, now you're not talking about meat, you're talking about low-carb diets. Is this about meat-based diets or is it about low-carb diets? Meat-based diets are subsumed in the low-carb circle in a Venn diagram sort of conceptual image, okay? But low-carb encompasses a lot more than that. Again, with the vague demagoguery, Stephanie. But frankly, put that aside. If you're against low-carb diets, why is your name still Stephanie Keto Person on YouTube? Why is it still Stephanie Keto Person?
They develop issues on carb diets and processed food and all this standard American.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
But on carnivore diets and snake diets and lion diets, remember when people...
Okay, so once again, those are not the same. By the way, the snake diet now, Cole Robinson is now, it's not the snake diet anymore. It's the sugar diet. The sugar diet. Eat like 1,000 or 2,000 grams of sugar to get shredded. Yeah. Good As if shredded means healthy, by the way. Okay. Anyway, Stephanie, you notice how you said diets, plural, on all those? First of all, the snake diet, you said snake diets. That is actually one diet. The lion diet, that's actually one diet. For the most part, you can have different cuts of meat, though. So I guess, but anyway. But you said low-carb diets, or carnivore diets. This is what you said, carnivore diets. Yeah, because there's different variations. Thank you for admitting it in your language.
Eating fermented meat and letting it rot.
Okay, yes, there is a fringe group of people that is letting their meat rot and calling it high meat and then eating it. I do not condone that behavior. There is a reason our stomachs are as acidic as they are. It is because there was a pressure on us to eliminate the pathogens that can be contained in rotting meat, okay? Which gives you an inference that, hey, if you have a super acidic stomach, you can maybe get away with it, but if you don't have to eat that, then don't. Because if pathogens in meat weren't a problem, then we wouldn't have had a pressure on our stomachs to become even more acidic than they were before. There are a lot of people eating rotting meat. Many of you might not have even known that. Just a little fun. Yes, there are crazy groups within sensible groups, always, okay? Have you guys been watching politics recently? Anyway.
Refrigerator for 6 months? I tried that. I didn't try eating it.
You tried it? Okay.
I let that shit ferment. I did everything that you're supposed to do.
Supposed to do? According to who? On the basis of what? Look, you're sharing your experience. That's fine. And I'm glad that you're saying, look, I understand where a lot of my clients are coming from because I was one of them. I think this is the point that you're trying to make here. That's great. But your conclusion that you've drawn from all of this, because we're in the weeds now, and I'm not saying that we won't make it home, okay, but we're in the weeds now. The conclusion is still wrong. Meat-based diets. I ate rotting meat and I did all that stuff and it didn't work. I don't think any of us are encouraging people to eat rotting meat. Any of the people that I think are sensible in the space. Anyway.
With the cheesecloth and this and that. And I would look at this thing, turn weird colors, and I'd be like, I ain't putting that in my stomach.
And neither should you.
People did.
Yes, people did. And also people do. By the way, I have no problem giving this person actually more fame because whatever. There's a person on Instagram called Scott Primal, if you want some entertainment value, because he does exactly that, and he records all of it. I think there's some screws loose in his head. He also believes that it's healthy to be fat, actually, as long as you eat the right foods to get there. And he believes that you should eat, like, all the time, and only raw stuff, and make it rotten, too. Anyway.
The raw meat extravaganza.
Okay, that's not as big of a deal as people make it out to be, as long as you source it properly. I've talked about this before on an objective basis, because once again, the objectivity on this channel, it's unparalleled. If you were to look at the incidence rates between 2008, or really 1998 to 2008 from the CDC, you'll find that the incidence rates of people coming down with illness that was linked to plants versus meat, all animal products, actually, all of them combined. So this is including, besides raw milk, but including all poultry, all red meat, pork, all of it. The incidence rates of people coming down with illness is actually less in the meat group, 48%. As it is in the plant group, 52%. It's almost 50-50. Now, again, to be objective, more people died in the meat group that got ill than in the plant group. But either way, more people got sick from ostensibly the plants. It was linked to the consumption of plant foods than it was in the meat group. But I don't even think that has to do with plants themselves or meat themselves. I believe it has to do with the fact that it comes from a lot of plants and a lot of meat comes from other countries, and it goes through a different chain of processes where it has a higher and higher chance of becoming contaminated, theoretically at least. There's more opportunities for it to become contaminated with something, cross-contamination or something else, E. coli, listeria, salmonella, all that stuff. It's very interesting, okay? And I've heard lots of people do better on raw meat, and we do have an acidic stomach to neutralize a lot of pathogens. I think it's probably best if you fully cook chicken. Chickens can be some dirty animals, man. And pork, you don't need to cook all the way through anymore. But chicken, I would suggest doing that. And with red meat, that's your safest bet. Steaks particularly. Ground beef, maybe be a little more careful. Ground beef comes from every part of the cow, is really what I'm trying to say. So, anyway, yes, there's a minority of people in the carnivore space that are doing it raw. Go ahead. Be my guest. I don't prefer to do that, but I've had rare steak, and that's close. I don't have any problems with it.
But now we know how many people are experiencing parasites because we don't go out and have a farm and process our own animals.
Which is why I just said that you have to be careful with where you source the meat from. Which is why I don't even try to eat raw right now. I'm not going to eat raw conventional meat. I'm not doing that. I'm cooking my meat.
So we know where our meat is coming from. A lot of people are just going to Sprouts. They're going.
Yes, they are. They're going to Sprouts. Yes, I know. This is my point.
Or they're just going to wherever, or their local farm, but whatever.
It doesn't surprise me that she's actually from California, like she was saying in the beginning. I've heard many people talk like that. It's funny.
How long is it taking before that food reaches your mouth?
Exactly. That was my point this whole time. Stephanie and I agree on something.
Parasites, bacterial infections, a lot of you are developing that because of these trends.
Yes, however, it is important to mention the fact that there is a germ theory and also a terrain theory, and they're not mutually exclusive, and I believe there's equal truth. I think it's a 50-50 combination of both of them. So your propensity to come down with a pathogenic infection and a viral infection, I believe, is not only dependent on the amount of contamination that was involved, but also the health status of your body, which is that's where terrain theory comes in. A lot of people, they want to pretend like it's mutually exclusive. No, it's terrain theory. If you get to optimal health, you'll never get sick ever. Oh, it's germ theory. It doesn't matter how healthy you get. If you're infected with this, you will become sick. Guys, there's truth to both of them. They're not mutually exclusive. I think we can agree on both of them being the case. I got sick at the beginning on New Year's Eve, fever and everything. I haven't been that sick in a long time, and that happened. Must be because the carnivore diet isn't making me healthy then, according to the terrain folks. Terrain theory, folks. Anyway.
And the fasting trend.
Trend? We've been fasting for f***ing millions of years. I'm not saying to fast all the time. And by the way, define fast. That's a relative term nowadays, isn't it? Because you just called OMAD fasting.
In the spectrum of life, it's not earth-shattering to the rest of what's going on in the world today or what's going on in my home state. But because I do this for a living, I'm just appalled. I talk to people all the time, every day. And it's
So do I, Stephanie. Not as much as you do if you're actively a coach and coaching people. I don't coach people, but I hear people's stories. I've had people come to me and say, hey, I'm having issues. Tell me what to do. I'm not unaware of this. Okay. I also just talked to Coach Peter about this. He's had issues with coaching clients on carnivore. It's important that we get this stuff out there and not hide it for ideological reasons. But his response was very adequate.
and bamboozle. Nobody gets better.
That's just a f***ing lie, Stephanie. Are you kidding me right now? Can you believe that she just actually f***ing said that? Nobody's getting better. Right, Stephanie. I don't know what. You moved from California to some other state, so you'd think that you left delusional land. La La Land, okay, because you left California. But I'm wondering if you moved to Washington State, because seriously, I don't know what reality you're living. It's not reality. It's not reality, guys. I really don't understand what's going on here.
No one's been like, oh, I'm doing so amazing on this advice.
Hold on a minute. What advice are you talking about? The stuff that you just laid out? The fasting fad or something? Because what I'm registering this as is carnivore. Low carb diets, because people have gotten better on low carb diets and they're thriving on low carb diets. I would suspect the vast majority are, at least eventually, because again, transition, that can be hard. You wouldn't think that if you transitioned your pet to a completely different diet after it's been on it for the majority of its life, that it would just go swell and swimmingly immediately. When you immediately transition that, you wouldn't expect that. So why do we expect it with us? That's just not going to happen. You need a transition period, okay? I did a transition period unintentionally for months because I was just slowly transitioning towards carnivore after I was learning more and more things. But other people have to consciously do it.
Crapped in 2 weeks and I feel amazing not crapping. And
Oh my God, Stephanie, 2 weeks? That may be a problem. You know what, Stephanie? If you're actually backed up, you'll be symptomatic. Okay, I'm sick and tired of this. I'm sick and tired of this. When you are on a carnivore diet, there is less plant waste because you're not eating plants. Fiber is indigestible. So what do you think is going to happen when you eat a lot of fiber? What is going to be the frequency of your bowel motions? Is it going to be up or is it going to be down? Okay, give me a break.
amazing.
If your clients are saying they feel amazing, you have an obligation to say, good, I'm glad. continue doing what you're doing if you want to. This is irresponsible. We need better coaches. You want an opportunity to do that? Links in the description below.
With my hair falling out, my blood sugar all over the place.
Blood sugar all over the place, eating no carbohydrates. Are you kidding me, Stephanie? Is that really what happens when you depend on your liver to produce glucose in a demand-driven fashion? If it is all over the place, we need to look at their protein consumption.
People will see some benefits doing a carnivore diet.
They will see a massive amount of benefits, full ameliorations of all their chronic health conditions, as well as a little bonus amelioration of all these other little tiny things they didn't even think were issues. That's common. Happened with me. Mood regulation, acne. Which, it's funny because as I say that, there's just this little tiny, there's these here. And you know why? It's always associated with a little tiny bit of sugar that I have at someone else's house or something. Or the tiniest bit of like the pasteurized conventional shredded cheese. That'll do it. So before people knock on the carnivore diet, it never happens whenever I'm really strict. So anyway, when Stephanie sees this, she'll make a video being like, oh, people are getting face full of acne on carnivore, 2 pimples.
And then there's a lot of pitfalls.
We covered that, didn't we? I'm done repeating myself, so I'm not going to.
And the people teaching this crap don't tell you what can go wrong or what happens.
That's a lie, isn't it? That's just not true. I don't know who you're listening to, or rather who you're not listening to, because the problem with saying that is just ignoring people like me, first of all, which, by the way, when you made this video, I'm still a relatively small channel, so fine, okay, whatever. Put me aside. Do you really think Bart K, Anthony Chafee, Ken Berry, they're not talking about these issues that can happen? Give me a break. Also, you have to keep in mind, though, you have to also keep in mind, first of all, they do talk about it, but second of all, you think it's going to be the main thing they talk about? No. Why would it be? Why would they promote a diet with the main promotion being, hey, are you having problems on this diet? You have to understand that there are markets, and that's not a bad thing, by the way. Goodness, I'm not going to sit here on this channel and say, hey, carnivore's the way to go. Let's talk about all of the problems that you can experience on a carnivore diet, okay? And that's not me being evil. If anything, it's actually the exact opposite of me being deceitful or manipulative. If I actually believe that this diet is the way to go, I wouldn't focus on the negatives. I'd focus on all the positives. If I want more people to go this route, I wouldn't talk about the negatives. I'd be doing people a disservice that way. Because guess what? Markets provide the service for the other people. It's not selfish to make money. Okay? It's pretty selfless, actually.
Gone wrong. Do I think that anybody doing a carnivore diet on just doing meat and salt for 20 years is being honest? Luck, no.
So now you are doing something that is completely, frankly, in my opinion, sordid and unacceptable. One of the foundational Western principles is innocent until proven guilty. It's actually one of the main unique elements of our society that separates us from barbaric societies that still exist today, okay? Because in every other society that isn't westernized, it's guilty until proven innocent, okay? And that's what you're doing right now. Guilty until proven innocent. Oh, I don't believe you because it doesn't fit my ideology. You, basically. You're a liar. Good. So, no respect for that attitude whatsoever. None, Stephanie. None at all. Unacceptable behavior from you, frankly. That's the nail in the coffin for me. Get a grip.
Humans are...
Tell me about it. Humans are... Yeah, tell me about it, Stephanie. Humans are... Okay.
Humans are subjective. Especially...
Yes, humans are subjective. Wow, we're learning things today, guys. Wow! What have you exposed about meat-based diets today, Stephanie? Nothing? You've just given your opinion.
Especially modern humans. Where's the moral?
No, actually, especially medieval humans. Did you hear about the witch trials? That was driven by guilty until proven innocent as well. You know how dangerous that philosophy is? I don't care how micro of a level you do it on. You can make some mistakes, and it's better that the mistakes are made on a micro level than a macro level. Everyone does it, because we are tribal and we're flawed, but it doesn't make it acceptable. Innocent until proven guilty. If a vegan came to me right now and said, I feel the best I've ever felt on a vegan diet, you know what I always say? I go, wow, great. I believe you, because you haven't provided me with any evidence of the contrary for me to not believe you. Unless they have, like them lying all the time about other things. But then I'd have a reason to be like, okay, I don't really want to make an opinion as to whether you're telling the truth or not. But if they also tell me I tried carnivore and it didn't work well for me, I'd also say, Okay, fine. Let's look into it. This is what responsible people do. If you're an authority figure in a medical space, like a clinician, that's what you do. You listen to your patients. You don't look at them like they're wrong because you don't like the experience that they're telling you. In your own personal life, if you want to do guilty until proven innocent and you want to jump to conclusions and stuff like that, we all do that. Fine, go ahead and do that. It's still not optimal, and we should strive to curtail our propensity and proclivity to do those things. Okay? It's whenever it gets to this degree where you're giving people health advice on the basis of guilty until proven innocent. Okay, there you go. There's when the problem arises. It only takes one little step for it to be way too far.
You put MD next to your name and you think you got an authority? If people have the nerve to ask me, let's see your education, you're not a doctor. Why? Don't watch my videos.
Agree, but what are you, wait a minute. Are you saying that the main demographic of carnivores appeals to authority? The ones that had to question authority to even get to where they are in the first place? Really? What is she talking about?
Watch the doctors and then eat Oscar Mayer hot dogs from the supermarket.
Oh, okay, so you're making a dig at Ken Berry. Ken didn't encourage people to eat Oscar Mayer hot dogs, okay? What he said was that if it's the only thing you can afford, you'll be healthier eating Oscar Mayer hot dogs and Spam than eating a bunch of Twinkies and Ding Dongs every day, if you actually listen to what he said. And he's right. If you are living below the federal poverty line, like me, eating f***ing Oscar Mayer hot dogs, if it's literally the only thing you can afford to be carnivore, I would say, yeah, go ahead and do that, because it's better than having your green smoothies and fruit salads and, if you are a really standard American, Cinnamon Toast Crunch and Ding Dongs and lemon Oreos or something. Pick the f***ing junk food, okay? That's what Ken says. Don't misrepresent Ken f***ing Berry. Show some respect.
As much meat as possible, because meat...
No one says eat as much meat as possible, Stephanie, unless they're undergoing a priming protocol. We say eat meat until satiety. Ken Berry, speaking of, says eat until comfortably stuffed. Sorry, Ken. I'm being a little funny. That's what he says. So, no, Stephanie.
And then nobody sits there and goes, whatever happened to Frank Tufano and Paul Saladino?
No. What happened to them? First of all, are they representative of the overall demographic of carnivores? Or are they representative of influencers who make a buck promoting things and have their ethics challenged every day because we live in a capitalist society? And guess what? Things that are marketable are not necessarily the greatest, ethically speaking. Like pornography, okay? They're representative of an influencer space. So what happens to influencers a lot of times? Do they get encouraged by money? The thing with Frank was that he tried to go for marketable content and he failed anyway. Okay, he's still kicking though. He's not a complete failure in the space. Good for him. But anyway, we know what happened to them. Okay? We know what happened to Paul Saladino. The same issues happened to him that happens to many other carnivores because of issues that are very easily fixable. With Frank, more arcane, I'll put it that way. I wasn't around whenever that was happening. I wasn't around when the Paul Saladino happened either, but I was familiar enough with what happened to him. With Frank, not so much. But the N of 2, Stephanie, really? An influencer demographic?
Even Sean Baker.
Even Sean Baker? What?
With the neck back pain thing going on.
Oh my God, Stephanie. Wow. This is some up shit that you're doing. You are misrepresenting what actually happened and, or at the very least, are jumping to conclusions to subserve your ideological desire to assert your position as superior. You don't even realize that what you're doing is exactly what you're accusing other people of doing in this video. They're just possessed by ideology. Humans are subjective, so they'll use with the implicit message, with saying that explicit message, that since people are subjective, they're going to find ways to justify their ideology despite it being proven to be wrong or something. Stephanie, what the f are you doing right now? Are you misrepresenting things and manipulating things in order to fit your ideological framework? This is up shit. This really is. This really is. Good on you, Stephanie. Seriously. I'm glad to bring you on this channel to showcase this absolute squalid behavior of yours.
Y'all ain't questioning stuff.
Carnivores aren't questioning things. Carnivores! I'm sure that many of you, when you heard about carnivore first, thought it was f***ing crazy. And then, what did you do? Did you ask ask questions. I'm sure you did. I'm sure you continue to ask questions because that's what you ought to do. That's what we all ought to do. Okay? I don't know everything. None of us do. None of us will. That's where Greek thought meets Jerusalem thought. Material science versus revelation. At least the concepts of such. Greek thought you can only learn so much with. Revelation, certain truths spontaneously come to you. Anyway, that's just a little bit of history of science, by the way, and also all of Western civilization.
I mean, Paul Saladino is very intelligent.
Yeah, okay.
He's not stupid. And just because you're smart don't mean you have common sense. Or maybe... I'm not saying that he doesn't. I'm just saying it's weird to put out a book and get so sick on a diet and be...
So sick? Stephanie, he was having issues. I wouldn't call it sick, but it was very clear what the issue was, okay? Protein.
Television show and then coach girls who are doing an all-meat diet and then they all jump off of it and then...
I don't know anything about that.
Other doctors spawn up. Truth me.
What?
Spawn up. Truth me.
Someone help me out with that in the comments.
And then they've gotten it right. Y'all can't see what I see.
Oh, that's what this is about. Okay, Stephanie. All right.
When they flip on that camera, y'all need to get extra close to the face.
I think I've done a good job of that thus far in this video.
All right, I digress.
Do you think?
I'm digressing.
You think?
This is my rant.
Great. This is my response to said rant. Inane, asinine rant.
It's like it got triggered from seeing what was going on back in my home state to like, why is everything today so damn corrupt? Even the industry that I'm supposedly in, but not really.
Oh, it depends on what you mean by industry. Do you mean the overarching industry, the medical industry? Because yeah, absolutely corrupt. Do you mean the sort of subfraction of that, the health industry? Lots of corruption there. Yeah. Do you mean the carnivore industry? I don't really see a lot of corruption there at all, frankly. Sure, you always got your bad apples. But again, you haven't really provided us any evidence to believe that what you're telling us is the truth. This is your opinion. And if people find your opinion valuable, that's great. Keep doing you. Keep espousing that opinion. Go ahead. I would suggest not doing it if it's grounded in a poor ethical framework or an untrue ethical framework. But, okay.
My channel has always been a warning channel, not because there's gurus just promoting absolute trash.
Correct. Those aren't meat-based diets, though, by the way, okay? The vast majority of meat-based diets promoted are not some sort of scam, okay? We are obligate carnivores, not omnivores.
And not all the time, and not every person.
Correct, Stephanie. Absolutely correct. Thank you.
A lot of people.
Yes.
It's because there was a woman that I coached and I put a plan together and she just put her husband on the same plan and he went to the hospital because of
Okay. What was the plan?
severe dehydration. And I was like, never again.
Dehydration. On what diet? And was the diet responsible? Because remember, association doesn't equal causation, okay? This isn't being insensitive to your client. It's actually doing the exact opposite. We need to be objective. We can't throw our hands in the air when something goes wrong, okay? Think. In fact, people that are in a crisis situation depend on other people to remain sane in many cases. It's your responsibility as a coach to remain sane, to remain objective, stay calm, think. Okay?
Never again.
Right. That's not what you should have done, by the way, even if your diet is not something that's indicated for humans. You shouldn't look at an N of 1 and go, F that, man. All of my clients, I've told you all the wrong information. Get off this diet or else eventually you'll become dehydrated. Is that responsible?
I'm never going to use my words and put people's health in jeopardy.
Wait a minute. You're still coaching, aren't you? What the hell is this? So, what makes you so certain now?
Let's warn people about the benefits and the risks.
Warn people of benefits. Anyway, risks. What do you mean risks, Stephanie? My ears are perking up quite a bit because I heard the word risk. What do you mean by risk, Stephanie? Show some evidence of risks on meat-based diets. You've talked about low-carb diets. You've talked about keto diets. Quote, unquote. What do you mean They're not all the same.
Because that's balance, that's homeostasis.
Yes. Now provide us with evidence of risks of carnivore diets. And also discern between which carnivore diets you're talking about and which ones you are not talking about.
It's promoting like miracles. Just eat meat, and that's all you need to do, just eat more meat.
Okay, there are some influencers that say just eat meat. And frankly, as a general rule, that'll probably get you 70% there, at least. But guess what, Stephanie? There are other factors that are at play that need to be emphasized, like a transition period that's properly tenured and properly fortified. The diet itself that needs to be properly tenured and properly fortified to be as congruent with our evolutionarily consistent diet that has been our diet evolutionarily for millions of years, okay? We also need lifestyle behaviors to be inculcated as well, because it's not just about diet, it's about lifestyle as well. We need to be living an indicated lifestyle, not just eating an indicated diet. There are many other factors at play. You cannot sit here and say that since some people's advice is bad about carnivore diets, that therefore you should throw the diet out the window, Stephanie. That's ridiculous.
Your hair's falling out, eat more meat. Getting fat, eat more meat.
This is a gross oversimplification of this. It's actually like comical. Seriously?
B12 is high, eat more meat. Your iron.
B12 is, okay, we already covered the B12 is high. Iron is high. Look, we already covered it. Show me some evidence of these people being high in B12, and then show me what their behavior is. Once again, let's say all of this stuff, the assumptions you're drawing, that you're making, are true. You then need to assess whether or not it is the diet or not. This woman here seems to be someone that just throws their hands up in the air and says, okay, if someone has a problem with the diet, then it was wrong for everybody, and now I'm going to take the side of being a contrarian for clicks.
Your iron's overloaded. Just eat more meat, because it heals. Be careful, my people.
I'm about to stop this video. Seriously.
Aren't you guys sick of just the bullshit?
Yes, we're sick of the bullshit, Stephanie. Also known as bullshit. And there's a lot of people espousing it. In fact, I'm looking at one right now.
I am.
So am I, Stephanie. We share that. We have that in common.
But I'm really the only one out of all my friends that truly left California. So maybe that's why. I'm a rebel. I was like, oh, hell no. Oh, no. I'm going to breathe clean air. I ain't having any swords come near my shoulders. Oh, no. I'm not going to be trapped in an earthquake, and I'm not going to get burned alive. Really, my horse. It's me. And I'm not going to listen to all the fuckery in the keto carnivore sphere of bullshit.
Where is it, Stephanie? Point to it and I'll criticize it if it's actually bullshit. In fact, I still do that. You want me to give an example? Talk to me and I'll give you one. I have one in my head right now, okay? That doesn't mean a carnivore diet isn't the approach that you should be embarking upon. Stephanie, lots of people, there are lots of bad apples, Stephanie. If a cop gets fired for literally committing murder, does that mean to abolish the police? That's the first example that comes to mind. Why are you insisting on this behavior? Some of my clients didn't do well on this, so therefore, I'm wrong. Think, maybe you are, but you need to take a step back and think about the issue, okay?
I just had to let it off my chest today.
I'm glad that you did so. Here is my response to this. It doesn't seem like you got enough off of your chest at this point in the video, though, because we're 12 minutes and 50 seconds in, and it's about halfway done.
If anyone says that they've done these low-carb diets and have never had a single problem and that everything's just bonus, they're lying.
Okay, go yourself, Stephanie, for saying that. That is extremely offensive. That is frankly so offensive. You don't even realize how offensive it is, and it's pathetic. It is sad that you don't understand how pathetic that is. It's rude, it's insensitive, it's inconsiderate as Get the out of here. I'm playing this just for a little bit longer, guys. Really.
Say it right now.
Yeah, you said it earlier too, and it was wrong then too. At the very least, you have no evidence of that. Wow, the arrogance. The arrogance from this woman.
Telling you
Maybe if you weren't so arrogant, you'd actually have a bigger channel. After being around for, what, over 10 years? This video has a few thousand views. I get more views than you, Stephanie, and I've been in the space for a little over a year. And I can thank many other people for the subscriber count and the viewership. To be fair, it's not all just me. In fact, it might even be the minority of me. But show some respect.
They're not telling you the whole story. So stop.
First of all, to give some perspective here, if you were on a carnivore diet for 40 years, you've had 40 years of life that you've lived during that time period. I guarantee you had problems during that time. Of course, if you actually talked about it, first of all, she would blame it on the carnivore diet, of course. or on a carnivore diet, whatever diet you were on is that's why I said the. And number two, do you really expect people to be able to give their whole 40-year life story in an interview? They give the net positives and the bright spots, okay? This is just stupid. I'm done reacting to this. Offensive as really offensive from Stephanie. I have no patience for that, okay? So basically, Stephanie has a guilty until proven innocent mentality, which has led to catastrophe historically. I know that a lot of people might think that's just a dramatic line to draw there. It's, oh, Eddie, it's not that deep. Yeah, it is, because we're talking about philosophy here. Her philosophy is guilty until proven innocent. That's great. Let's see where that gets you in life, really. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, leave your thoughts in the comment section below, subscribe to the Patreon if you haven't already, and also buy my book, Contraindicated, a closer look and revision of mainstream health axioms that have perpetuated illness, disorder, and disease for over a century. By the time you're watching this video, the second edition is probably already out. So go ahead. Don't waste any further time. Audiobook version is available, ebook version, paperback, hardcover, any format that you like. It's all there in the link in the description below. And finally, the link on the bottom of the screen. What is that link? Well, that is a link that will bring you to an amazing site with amazing products from an amazing brand known as Cerule. If you purchase product through that link, you will get a permanent percentage discount and a permanent free shipping discount as well when signing up for monthly deliveries. And if you email me behind the scenes at edgoki14@gmail.com, I can tell you how to earn those products for free as well, just like I do. Because who in their right mind wouldn't want that? So, with that being said, I would not encourage you to buy these products if you don't know what they are. Never, ever do that. So, if you're curious to know what these products are, fortunately for you, I have a video that does exactly that, linked in the top right corner of the screen, the Cerule products link, which is a complete video elucidation and explanation of what those products are, who should take them, why you should take them, when to take them, etc., etc. And I'd also further migrate to the description below to find a video between myself and Professor Mark K on these products in further detail, as well as the company of Cerule itself, because I think that's pretty important if you're wanting to buy their products. So, with that being said, join me next time when we react to more arrogance, more charlatan espousals from someone that still calls themselves keto when apparently they're not a fan of keto anymore. Sounds an awful lot like someone else. Paul Saladino, perhaps? Carnivore MD? Wasn't carnivore for years and then decided to change his name because that was the right thing to do. Anyway, I digress. As Stephanie once said, I digress. So, I'll catch you then.